Live.
The ring-tailed is the best known of Madagascar's lemurs. It's unique to the island. But then 90% of the animals and 80% of the plants on Madagascar are found nowhere else on Earth. But the forests in which these primates live are a shadow of what they once were. If efforts to save them and their wilderness home fail, then these distant cousins of man could become just a memory after the trees they once lived in have all disappeared. The ring-tailed lemur is limited to south and southwestern Madagascar. It inhabits many forest types, including dry scrub, deciduous, gallery, and dideria forest. The dideria forest is home to another lemur, Burroughs shifaka. The lemurs evolved long before the monkeys and apes, including humans. But when monkeys did appear, they proved too versatile for the lemurs and drove them to extinction everywhere except Madagascar and the Comoro Islands. Monkeys and apes never reached Madagascar, so the lemurs continued to evolve here without competition. The shifaka lives in Madagascar's semi-arid, spiny southern forests. It's a diurnal climber and leaper. The mountainous east coast of Madagascar shields the land to the west from the moist wind of the Indian Ocean. In the south especially, the result is a parched area where only specialized wildlife can survive. The bottle-shaped elephant's foot palm is one of an array of trees forming an unique arid forest. The plants here tend to have thick trunks and stems, or tiny leaves protected by rows of thorns. All adaptations to save water and fend off plant eaters. Even the fruits of some plants are covered in barbs. The local people leave this variety in the corner of their houses to catch rats, but in the forest, lizards are sometimes caught on these fruits. Madagascar has several of its own species of snake, like the Madagascan hognose. This snake is one of Madagascar's 2 boa constrictors. In Africa, the pythons have taken over from the constrictors, but here they still survive, protected like the lemurs by their isolation. Another family of reptiles, the chameleons, are well represented in Madagascar. They can grow exceptionally large. This one is 30 centimeters long and hunts in the trees. Another animal which eats insects is the spiny tenrec. The tenrec is a primitive mammal and the only surviving member of its family. Elsewhere, more advanced mammals evolved and forced the rest of its kind into extinction. As with the lemurs, it only survives on Madagascar because of the island's isolation. The radiated tortoise is common in the drier parts of the country. All these animals share the ability to survive in arid conditions. The tortoise conserves water by being able to retreat into its shell and reduce water loss to a minimum. The chifaka has no such defense. During the warmer parts of the day, it saves energy by dozing in the shade. Due to its widespread distribution and presumed large population, Virot's chifaka is only classified as vulnerable rather than endangered. But recently it's been discovered that it's hunted much more frequently than was once thought, and so is more at risk. Although killing chifaka is taboo to several of the tribes living in its range, it's hunted by others and by immigrants to the region. It's an easy target because it lives in relatively open bush and often sits in a tree believing it's safely out of reach. Until about 2,000 years ago, there was only one predator large enough to threaten the chifakas. Then humans arrived, and the lemurs were not equipped with any defense against them. Sadly, they were too curious and unafraid, and people took advantage of them. As the afternoon wears on and the air cools down, the chifakas emerge from their shady resting places to groom and eventually to feed among the trees. They eat mostly leaves, fruit and flowers, but their diet is highly variable according to the season. Leaves are the most important food item during the dry months, and fruit after the rains. The main reason some chifakas are locally protected by a taboo or fad system is because of their similarity to humans. The ability of the species to leap from trunk to trunk on the cactus-like didaria trees is one of the most spectacular wildlife sights in Madagascar. These trees are protected by very hard, sharp spines, yet the chifakas are able to leap among them freely without injuring themselves. It's thought their jumps are so finely judged that they're able to take the thorns literally in their stride. The trees may be protected against wild animals, but their thorny armor is no defense against people. The Antandroy villagers are cattle herders and peaceful agriculturalists. Their name means people of the thorns. Traditionally, these villagers' lives are ruled by local fedi or taboos. The Antandroy express horror at the thought of eating any wild animal because human spirits are closely identified with the life of the forest. According to old Antandroy beliefs, to disturb their natural world is to invite catastrophe. Their food consists largely of vegetables, rice, sweet potatoes, manioc and maize. They keep cattle, but they eat meat only on important ritual occasions, like funerals. The more glorious a man's tomb, the more his descendants will revere him when he's dead. Recent tombs incorporate some modern symbols, but the traditional ones are adorned with cattle horns. For centuries, the Antandroi have lived with their cattle among the forest of thorns, but now they're destroying the trees for charcoal. When trees were only felled to provide for the local villages, the native forest had time to regenerate. But as the island's population has grown, so too has the demand for fuel wood. The villagers still believe that the forest will always keep them from starvation, but the evidence tells a different story. Every 3 or 4 days, the herds have to be taken 40 kilometers to the nearest permanent water, the Mandrari River. As they go, the cattle browse beside the track, each time destroying some more of the slow-growing, arid zone vegetation. The end result is a barren, dusty wasteland leading to the river. A small part of the river bank has been protected from the flocks and woodcutters by a wire fence. The difference is plain to see. The protected swathe of trees along the river bank, called gallery forest, is lush. Although this little forest is safe, the majority in Madagascar are threatened. The dry, arid region of southern Madagascar is an inhospitable place for all except specialized plants. Unfortunately for the native Dideria forest, there is one plant that grows well here and has a commercial value. It's sisal, used to make string, ropes, carpets and mattresses for beds. The local people find employment on the plantation and in the factory, and the industry brings much needed money into the community. When the leaves have been cut and stacked, they're taken to the factory to extract the fibers. It's a welcome rural industry, but every new sisal plantation means less of the old forest and a few more lemurs made homeless. There's a brighter side to the sisal industry, though. The factory and plantations are owned by the De Hume family, who've lived here for generations. Although much of the most productive land has been under sisal for a long time, the De Humes have ploughed some of their profits into conservation. Sisal, here being left to dry and bleach in the sun, provides the De Humes with a living. In return, the family are trying to save an area of living forest and its inhabitants. The barrier closes off the entrance to a small section of gallery forest, which is home to ringtail lemurs. Although this enclosed reserve is very small, the De Humes have also kept corridors of uncut forest among the sisal plots. Although ringtail lemurs are generally considered common because they're diurnal and very conspicuous, indications are that they may be more threatened than originally believed. As soon as the sun is up, ringtails warm themselves after the chills of the night. It's easy to see why the local people call them the sun worshippers. Their distinctive sunbathing posture allows solar rays to warm their chest, stomach, and the large blood vessels of the arms and legs. Ringtail lemurs inhabit many types of woodland in southern Madagascar, but they're most commonly found in gallery forest. Recent analysis of satellite pictures has revealed that this type of forest is disappearing at an alarming rate due to fires, overgrazing, and charcoal production. If the ring-tailed requires gallery forest for its survival, rather than just as a preferred habitat, it may be in serious trouble. It's not known exactly how dependent these lemurs are on water, but they do drink every day when moisture is available. Licking up dew off the grass is a daily ritual here. They also readily exploit other sources of water. A more natural water source comes from hollows in trees. The water tanks which supply the human inhabitants are also exploited by the lemurs. The males in these groups are always the last to drink, because in ringtail society, females are dominant over males. These lemurs naturally use their hands as a cup to scoop water out of tree holes. Here they use the same technique to get a drink from inside the water tanks. Ringtails live in multi-sex groups of between 3 and over 20 individuals. Females stay in their mother's tribe, while males transfer to neighbouring groups when they're 2 to 3 years old. This ensures that the animals avoid inbreeding. This individual has a broken tail. For a ringtail, it's a serious disadvantage. Their tails are important for communication. They use them like wands to waft scent around. Each individual has its own aroma, which informs others of their presence and status. The scent comes from glands on the lemur's wrists. No two animals have the same smell. It's as different as fingerprints. By rubbing their wrists on their tails, the lemurs advertise their personal identity wherever they go. Females first give birth at 3 years old, and most of them subsequently produce offspring annually. A female with twins is rare. 2 babies are heavy and cumbersome for such an athletic animal to carry, but twins can be reared just as successfully as a single young. Mature females with young are the group leaders. Where they lead, all the others follow. Each group has a well-defined territory which they defend against other tribes of ringtails. Other species of lemurs are ignored. As the tribe moves around its territory, the males mark the boundaries. They use a pungent scent produced from glands under their tail rather than from their wrists. Each male regularly checks the scented border posts and occasionally reinforces their message with his own. To an intruding ringtail from another tribe, the message is a clear "keep out" signal. The Antandroi, with their vegetable patches and cattle, have lived in harmony with native animals for centuries. Their religious respect for the wildlife around them has preserved it for 2,000 years. Now, though, their traditional fad beliefs may not be enough to save animals like lemurs. The increasing demand for charcoal, encroachment of browsing cattle, and clearing for agricultural needs is reducing the forest to small islands. It's asking a lot for a developing country with most of its population fighting poverty to save trees for a few small animals. Saving Madagascar's wildlife is perhaps the greatest test conservationists and the government have facing them today. The price may be high, but then Madagascar's precious lemurs are worth saving.